On the outer rim of known space, where stars flickered like dying embers and silence pressed against the hulls of lonely stations, orbital habitat E7 drifted in quiet routine. It was a place of repair crews, data runners, and diplomats too junior or too inconvenient for the core worlds. Among them lived Leela Cruz, a human xenolinguist with tired eyes and a stubborn streak that kept her translating dead alien dialects long after others had given up. Lila had been stationed on E7 for 6 months, assigned to decode fragments of Silthari script recovered from a derelict scout vessel. The Silthari were rarely seen. Tall, silver-eyed beings with skin like moonlit bark and voices that hummed like wind through crystal chimes. They called themselves the Veiled Dominion, and they kept their distance from the rest of the galaxy, so when a Silthari woman moved into the adjacent quarters just 3 days ago, Leela had been equal parts thrilled and nervous. Her name was Naira Velis. She arrived without fanfare, accompanied only by a small, cloaked figure that moved with unnatural grace. Lila later learned that figure was actually a dragon, Kalthar, though he rarely showed himself. The few times she'd glimpsed him, his scales shimmered like oil on water and his eyes held centuries. Still, Lila wanted to be friendly. Humans were often seen as loud, impulsive, and careless with customs. She didn't want to add to that reputation, so she studied. She watched archived cultural logs, cross-referenced gesture databases, and even practiced Silthari phonetics in the privacy of her room. She learned that direct eye contact was a sign of trust. That silence could be a form of greeting, and that humor, real, playful humor, was almost never used in formal Silthari interaction. But Lila wasn't trying to be formal. She just wanted to say hello in a way that wouldn't offend. One evening, after a long shift in the linguistics bay, Lila spotted Nira on the observation deck. The deck was a favorite spot, a wide curved window that looked out into the velvet dark where Viridian 9's twin rings caught the light of a distant sun. Nira stood alone, one hand resting on the cool transparisteel, her long silver hair stirring slightly in the recycled air. Lila took a breath and approached. "Hey," she said softly, stopping a respectful distance away. Nira turned, her eyes pale, luminous, unreadable, fixed on Lila. She didn't speak, but she didn't look away either. That was a good sign. Lila smiled. "I've been meaning to say hi. I'm Lila. I live next door." A pause. Then Nira inclined her head slightly. "I am Nira Velis." Her voice was calm, melodic, but distant. Lila didn't take it personally. Silthari weren't known for warmth. Remembering a clip she'd watched the night before, Lila mimicked a gesture she'd seen in an old diplomatic exchange. A quick flick of the wrist, palm up followed by a light teasing tone. "You know," she said, trying to sound casual, "if we keep running into each other like this, people might think we're sharing starlight forever." She meant it as a joke. A human idiom, silly and harmless. Back on Earth, someone might say we're basically married after borrowing sugar 3 times in a week. It was absurd. It was funny. It was safe. But the moment the words left her lips, the air changed. Nira went utterly still. Her breath caught. Her eyes widened, not in anger, but in something deeper, older. Recognition, awe, fear. Lila's smile faltered. Was that not okay?" Before Nira could answer, a soft chime echoed through the habitat, not the usual alert tone. This was different, lower, resonant, almost musical. It came from the walls themselves, as if the station had exhaled. Then the ambient lighting shifted. A pale blue glow pulsed once along the corridor outside the deck. Another chime followed, then a third. Lila's wrist comm buzzed. She glanced at it. A message scrolled across the screen in crisp. Official font, bond oath registered. Proposer, Lila Cruz, human. Viridian 9 registry 8842. Acceptor, Naira Velis, Silthari, House of Velis. Status, pending confirmation. Note, per Silthari covenant, revocation requires mutual consent or death. Lila stared at the words. Her stomach dropped. What is this?" she whispered, looking up at Nira. Nira hadn't moved, but her expression had softened into something like sorrow and resolve. "You spoke the words," Nira said quietly, "in the old tongue, even if you did not know it. Sharing starlight forever, that is not a joke among my people. It is the final vow, the binding." "But I didn't mean," Lila started, panic rising. "Intent does not matter," Nira interrupted gently. "Only the words." "And the witness, a witness?" Lila asked as if on cue. A shadow detached itself from the far end of the deck. Kelthar stepped forward, silent despite his size. His scales drank the light and his golden eyes fixed on Lila with unnerving focus. He didn't growl. He didn't threaten. He simply stood, a living monument to ancient law. He heard, Naira said. And the station's AI, linked to Silthari treaty protocols, recognized the phrase. The oath is live. Lila felt dizzy. So what happens now? I must accept, Naira said. To refuse would dishonor my house, insult your courage, and break the covenant between our peoples. And I do not wish to refuse. Lila blinked. You don't? Naira looked out the window again, but her posture had changed. Less rigid, more open. You spoke without knowing the weight of the words? Yet you spoke them to me. That is brave, or foolish. Perhaps both. But in my culture, such boldness is rare, and valued, Lila swallowed. This is insane. I made a joke. A dumb human joke. And yet, Naira said, turning back to her. Here we are. Another chime sounded, deeper this time. The comm buzzed again. Acceptor has confirmed bond status. Active. Bond recognized by Silthari Dominion and Viridia 9. Treaty Council. Next phase. Bonding rights to commence. Within 72 standard hours, Lila's hands trembled. Bonding rights? Like marriage? Not as your people understand it, Naira explained. It is a soul oath. A joining of purpose, protection, and path. We do not share beds unless we choose to, but we share fate. Lila leaned against the wall, trying to process. She was now legally, spiritually, and, apparently, diplomatically bound to an alien woman she barely knew. And her pet dragon was a witness. What if I say no now? Lila asked, voice small. You cannot, Naira said. Not without consequence. If you withdraw after acceptance, the bond breaks in violence. Tradition demands a duel, or exile, or worse. Worse? Naira hesitated. The unbound are considered oath-breakers. In Silthari space, that is a death sentence. And even here, the Dominion may withdraw all cooperation with Viridia 9. Trade, defense, medical aid, all gone. Because of one broken word, Lila closed her eyes. She hadn't just joked. She'd gambled with an entire colony's future. Why would your people tie something so serious to a phrase that sounds so light? She asked. Because true commitment should not be spoken lightly, Naira replied. We believe that if a vow is easy to say, it is easy to break. So we embed it in beauty, in poetry. Only those who truly mean it, or those too reckless to care, will utter it. Lila let out a shaky laugh. Well, I definitely fall into the reckless category. Naira's lips curved just slightly. The first real expression Lila had seen from her. Reckless humans saved my ancestors once. Or so the old songs say. Before Lila could ask what that meant, Kelthar stepped closer. He lowered his massive head until his eyes were level with hers. Then very softly he exhaled. A warm, rumbling breath that carried the scent of ozone and old stone. Lila didn't flinch. She met his gaze. After a long moment, the dragon stepped back and gave a single, slow blink. It felt like approval. He sees something in you, Naira said, watching him. Kelthar does not blink for just anyone. Great, Lila thought. Not only was she married to an alien, but her dragon-in-law liked her. Over the next hour, station officials arrived, human and Silthari alike, to confirm the bond. Forms were filed. Records updated. Lila's clearance level changed. Suddenly, she had access to restricted Silthari archives, diplomatic channels, even emergency evacuation protocols tied to Naira's bloodline. Through it all, Naira remained calm, answering questions with quiet precision, but Lila noticed how her fingers occasionally brushed the silver band on her left wrist, a Silthari token of lineage. Now a second band, faintly glowing, began to form beside it. Lila's own wrist tingled. When she looked, a matching mark, subtle like a constellation, was appearing on her skin. It's real, Lila whispered. It has always been real, Naira said. You just didn't know the language. As the officials left and the deck emptied, the two women stood in silence again, side by side, watching the rings of Viridia 9 catch the starlight. I'm sorry, Lila finally said, for messing this up. Naira shook her head. You did not mess it up. You spoke, and I listened. That is how bonds begin. Lila looked at her, really looked. Naira wasn't angry. She wasn't trapped. She seemed curious, maybe even hopeful. So what now? Lila asked. Now, Naira said, we learn each other. before the rites. Before the galaxy watches to see if a human and a Sylthari can truly stand together. Lila nodded slowly. It wasn't what she'd planned, but maybe, just maybe, it was what she needed. Outside, the stars burned on, indifferent and eternal. But inside Habitat E7, something new had begun. Not with war or treaty, but with a joke, a flick of the wrist, and two women who didn't yet know they were about to change everything. The days after the bond oath passed in a blur of quiet tension and strange new routines. Lila and Nira were assigned shared quarters, not by choice but by Sylthari custom. The bond required proximity during the early phase, a time called the weaving when the two lives began to intertwine. Lila kept to one side of the room, Nira to the other, and Kael'thar. Well, Kael'thar seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. He never stayed in the main living space. Instead, he drifted through the lower maintenance tunnels of Habitat E7, silent as smoke, appearing only when needed. But Lila always felt his presence. A low hum in the walls, a flicker of shadow at the edge of vision, the faint scent of warm stone after rain. On the third morning, Lila woke to find him waiting just outside their door. He sat on his haunches, tail curled neatly around his claws, eyes fixed on her with unnerving patience. She froze in the doorway, heart pounding. Good morning?" she said, voice rough with sleep. Kael'thar didn't move. Then slowly he lowered his massive head until his snout was level with hers. His breath was warm, steady, and then he spoke one word. Deep, resonant, vibrating not in the air but in her bones. "Worthy," Lila blinked. "What?" Before she could ask more, Nira appeared behind her, already dressed in her usual flowing gray robes.
"He is testing you," she said quietly.
"Kael'thar is not just my companion. He is the keeper of soul oaths. If he deems you unworthy, the bond can still be undone, but only through trial. And trials among my people are rarely kind." Lila swallowed. "So, what do I do?" "Nothing," Nira said. "You simply are. He will watch. He will listen. And he will decide." Kael'thar rose then, turned, and padded down the corridor without another sound. Lila stared after him, feeling like she'd just passed or failed a test she didn't know existed. That same day, the first sign of trouble appeared. Sector G, the agricultural wing of the habitat, reported a power fluctuation. Minor at first, lights dimming, hydroponic pumps stuttering. But within hours, the entire life support system for that sector went dark. Emergency crews rushed in but found no mechanical failure, no sabotage, just silence, as if the machines had chosen to stop. Lila heard about it during lunch in the mess hall. Whispers spread fast. Some blamed faulty wiring. Others muttered about Sylthari tech interfering with human systems. A few looked directly at Lila when they spoke. She kept her head down, eating quickly. But as she left, a man in a maintenance jumpsuit brushed past her and hissed, "Keep your alien problems off our station." She didn't respond, but her hands shook. Back in their quarters, Nira was reviewing data streams on a floating holoscreen. Her expression was grim. "It was not an accident," she said without looking up. "The shutdown followed a precise harmonic frequency, one used only in Sylthari null fields. Someone here knows how to mimic our tech." "Why would they do that?" Lila asked. "To make it look like we are dangerous," Nira replied. "To turn your people against us. There are factions within the Dominion who believe contact with humans was a mistake. They call you the Unbound Ones, chaotic, oathless, destructive. They fear what will happen if our peoples grow close." Lila sat on the edge of her cot. "So they're trying to start a fight. Or worse," Nira said. "They want the bond broken permanently." That night, Lila couldn't sleep. She paced the small room, listening to the hum of the station, the distant clang of pipes, the whisper of air through vents. Outside, the stars seemed colder than usual. Suddenly, a sharp alarm blared, short, urgent. Not the general alert, a personal security warning. Before she could react, Nira was on her feet, hand on a slender blade that seemed to appear from thin air. Kael'thar's presence surged in Lila's mind like a wave. Close, protective, furious. The door hissed open. Two figures stood in the hallway, clad in black tactical gear, faces hidden behind smooth masks. They carried pulse rifles, but these weren't standard issue. The barrels bore faint Sylthari glyphs, stolen or replicated. "Step away from the human," one of them said, voice filtered and cold. "The bond is void. She dies tonight." Nira didn't hesitate. She moved like liquid shadow, blade flashing. But the attackers were fast. One fired. The shot wasn't aimed at Nira. It was aimed at Lila. Time slowed. Lila saw the blue-white bolt of plasma streak toward her chest. She couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Then a wall of obsidian scales slammed between her and death. Kael'thar! He roared, a sound that shook the bulkheads, and took the full blast in his side. The impact threw him against the far wall, scales blackening, smoke rising from the wound. But he didn't fall. He rose again, eyes blazing gold, wings flaring wide despite the cramped space. The assassins froze. No one had expected the dragon to be inside. Kael'thar lunged, not with fire but with precision. One swipe of his tail sent the first attacker crashing into the ceiling. The second fired again, but Nira was already on him, disarming him with a twist of her wrist and a sharp strike to the throat. Within seconds, it was over. The attackers lay unconscious. Kael'thar collapsed, panting, blood, thick and iridescent, seeping from his side. Lila rushed to him, hands hovering, unsure what to do. Oh God, Kael'thar. He turned his head weakly toward her. His breath was ragged, but his eyes held hers with startling clarity. You carry the old fire, he rumbled, voice barely audible. Then his eyes closed and his body went still. Not dead, but sinking into a deep, healing hibernation, as Silthari dragons did when wounded. Nira knelt beside him, placing a hand on his snout. He will sleep for days, maybe weeks, but he saved you. Lila's throat tightened. Why, I'm just... Me. You are the one who spoke the vow, Nira said softly, even in jest. That means something to him. To us. Security arrived minutes later, summoned by the alarm. They took the unconscious attackers away, but not before scanning their gear. The weapons were traced to a black market dealer on Viridia 9's surface, one known to work with anti-alien extremists, but Lila knew better. The glyphs, the precision, the timing, it was too clean for mere humans. Someone from the Dominion was pulling the strings. Over the next 2 days, the station grew tense. Rumors spread. Some called Lila a liability. Others whispered that the Silthari were planning to take over. The Habitat commander placed Nira under informal watch. Though he didn't dare arrest her, Silthari law still held weight here. Meanwhile, Lila found something strange in their quarters. While cleaning near Kael'thar's usual resting spot, she noticed a loose panel in the floor. Beneath it lay a small crystalline data shard, warm to the touch, pulsing faintly with light. She recognized it from her work. A Silthari memory crystal, used to store history, not just data. Curious, she plugged it into her personal reader. Images flooded her mind, not words, but feelings, scenes, echoes of the past. She saw tall spires of living crystal under twin moons. She saw a great war, shadows swallowing worlds. She saw Silthari warriors falling, their light dimming. And then ships. Crude patchwork vessels with human markings. People in old-style suits offering aid, sharing food. Standing shoulder to shoulder with Silthari against the darkness. One scene stood out. A human woman, face lined with age but eyes bright, placing her hand over a Silthari elder's heart. Light passed between them. The Silthari whispered, "You remember, so we do not fade." The crystal went dark. Lila sat back, stunned. Humans had saved the Silthari, but that wasn't in any official record. The Galactic Archives claimed the Silthari had survived alone, through isolation and superior tech. Why hide this? She showed the crystal to Nira that evening. Nira's face paled. This is forbidden knowledge. The Conclave erased these memories centuries ago. They claimed contact with outsiders weakened us. But the truth is, they feared what we might become if we remembered we were not alone. So they lied, Lila said. To protect power, Nira replied. And now those who oppose the bond want to ensure that truth stays buried. Lila thought about Kael'thar's words. You carry the old fire. Was that what he meant? That humans still held something the Silthari had lost. That night she dreamed of twin moons and burning ships. She woke with tears on her cheeks and a strange warmth in her chest, like an ember that refused to die. The next morning, a message arrived, not through official channels, but through a hidden frequency only Silthari could access. Nira read it in silence, then turned to Lila with a look of grim determination. They are calling for the trial, she said. The High Conclave demands proof that the bond is true. If we do not answer, they will declare it false. And sentence us both. What trial? Lila asked. The trial of twin moons, Nira said. An ancient rite. held only on Silthera. It cannot be done here. But we can't just leave, Lila said. The station won't allow it. And those assassins, we have no choice, Naira interrupted. If we stay, they will keep coming. If we run, we might find the truth. And if we win the trial, the bond becomes unbreakable, even to them. Lila looked at Kael'thar, still sleeping in the corner, his breathing slow and deep. She thought of the crystal, the forgotten alliance, the fire inside her that she didn't understand. She nodded. Then we go. Plans formed quickly. Naira had a hidden freighter docked in Bay 7, a relic from her youth, fast and untraceable. They would leave during the next supply rotation, when traffic was heaviest. Lila would fake a medical emergency to explain her absence. Naira would disable the internal trackers in their quarters. It was risky, reckless even. The freighter shuddered as it broke orbit, engines straining against Viridia 9's weak gravity. Lila gripped the edge of her seat, knuckles white, watching the station shrink in the rear viewport until it was just a speck of light among stars. Beside her, Naira worked the controls with calm precision, her fingers dancing over glowing runes that responded to her touch like living things. They had made it out. Barely. A patrol drone had spotted them during launch, but Naira rerouted power to the stealth field just in time. Now they were adrift in the void, heading for the outer rim where Silthari law still held sway and human authorities dared not follow. Kael'thar lay curled in the cargo hold below, still deep in hibernation. His breathing was slow but steady, the wound on his side sealed under a layer of hardened, glass-like scales. He would not wake until his body deemed it safe. Until then, they were on their own. Lila exhaled. Now what? Now we run, Naira said. And we prepare. For the next 2 days, they took shifts at the controls, scanning for pursuers, rationing power and speaking little. But when they did talk, it was different. The distance between them had thinned. Lila no longer flinched at Naira's silences. Naira no longer watched her like a stranger. On the third night, Lila sat cross-legged on the floor of the small galley, the Silthari memory crystal warm in her palm. She had studied it again and again, each viewing revealing new layers. A child's laughter during a shared festival. A human engineer teaching Silthari how to repair a fusion core with scrap metal. A final farewell beneath twin moons as human ships vanished into the dark. Why did they forget us? Lila asked softly. Naira leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. Fear. After the war, the Dominion closed its borders. The elders said contact with outsiders brought chaos. They claimed the alliance was a myth, a story to comfort the young. Over time, even the truth-tellers stopped speaking. But Kael'thar remembered, Lila said. Dragons do not forget, Naira replied. They carry memory in their bones. That is why he guards the oaths. He is the last witness. Lila looked down at the crystal. There's more. I can feel it. Deeper layers. But I can't reach them. Naira stepped forward and knelt beside her. Then let me help. She placed her hand over Lila's where it held the crystal. Her skin was cool, smooth. A soft hum filled the air. The crystal brightened. Suddenly images surged, not just sights, but sounds, smells, emotions. Lila saw a vast chamber beneath Silthera's surface. Humans and Silthari standing together. Hands joined over a pool of liquid light. A chant rose in 2 languages woven as one. And then a spark. Not fire, but something deeper. A resonance. It flowed from the humans into the Silthari, reigniting their fading life force. What is that? Lila whispered. The resonance, Naira said, eyes wide with awe. Our ancestors called it the old fire. It is not in our blood. It is in your spirit, your capacity to feel, to connect, to give without expecting return. That is what saved us. Lila pulled her hand back, heart racing. So it's real. The fire, yes, Naira said, and it sleeps in all humans, but only a few remember how to wake it. Before Lila could respond, the ship's alarm blared, a sharp pulsing tone. Naira was on her feet in an instant. We have company. On the main screen, 2 vessels appeared on the edge of sensor range. Sleek, angular, bearing the sigil of the Dominion's inner guard. But the markings were altered, crossed with black thorns. The symbol of the Ashen Veil, a rogue faction that rejected all outside contact. They found us, Lila said. They were waiting, Naira corrected, fingers flying over the console. They knew we would run. She engaged the engines, pushing the old freighter faster than it was meant to go. Metal groaned. Lights flickered. Behind them, the enemy ships matched their speed. They won't board us, Naira said. They want us alive, to stand trial as oathbreakers. Public shame. Then execution. So we can't let them catch us, Layla said. No, Naira agreed. We must reach Silthera first. For hours, they dodged through asteroid fields and ion storms, using every trick Naira knew to lose their pursuers. Once they skimmed the edge of a dying star, using its radiation to mask their signature. Another time, they powered down completely and drifted among space debris, holding their breath as the enemy ships passed overhead. But the ashen veil was relentless. On the 5th day, they were cornered near the nebula of veiled tears, a cloud of gas that scrambled sensors but also blocked jump routes. The freighter's shields were failing. Fuel was low. Lila sat in the co-pilot seat watching the enemy close in. Is there any way out? Naira was silent for a long moment. Then she reached into a hidden compartment beneath the console and pulled out a small black device shaped like a seed. What's that? Lila asked. A soul key, Naira said. It holds a fragment of Kael'thar's essence. If I activate it, he will wake, but only for a few minutes, and it will drain what little strength he has left. Is it worth it? Naira looked at her. Only if you are ready. Lila thought of the crystal. The old fire. The faces of humans who stood with Silthari long ago. She thought of Kael'thar taking a plasma bolt for her. Do it, she said. Naira pressed the seed. Deep in the cargo hold, a low growl rumbled through the ship, then silence, then footsteps, heavy, deliberate. Kael'thar emerged from the hatch, wings folded tight, eyes burning gold. He was thinner, weaker, but his presence filled the room like a storm. He looked at Lila, then at the screen showing their pursuers. They come for the fire, he said, voice rough but clear. Can you fight? Naira asked. Not as I once could, he replied, but I can open a path. He moved to the rear of the ship, pressing his claws against the hull. A soft light spread from his touch. The metal rippled like water. Then with a sound like breaking glass, a rift opened in space itself. A narrow tunnel of swirling silver light. A resonance rift, Naira breathed. Only a dragon can make one. It leads straight to Silthera's moon gate. But it will cost you, Lila said, seeing the strain on Kael'thar's face. All things worth doing cost something. He rumbled. Go. I will hold the rift open long enough. Naira didn't argue. She steered the freighter into the rift. The moment they crossed the threshold, the enemy ships fired, but their weapons passed through empty space. The rift sealed behind them with a sigh. Inside the tunnel, time stretched and bent. Stars became lines. Silence became song. Lila turned to Kael'thar. Thank you. He lowered his head. You carry the old fire, Lila Cruz. Do not let it die. Then his eyes closed. He sank to the floor, body still, breath shallow. Not dead, but fading. Naira placed a hand on his snout. He gave us our chance. The rift ended abruptly. They emerged above a world of silver forests and floating mountains. 2 moons hung in the sky, one white, one violet. Silthera below, a ring of crystalline spires pulsed with soft light. The moon gate. But as they descended, alarms blared again. Not from enemies this time, from the planet itself. The spires were darkening, the light fading. Something is wrong, Naira said, voice tight. They landed in a wide courtyard, empty and silent. No guards, no welcome, only wind whispering through stone leaves. Then a figure appeared on the highest balcony, robed in ash-gray, face hidden. The leader of the Ashen Veil. Naira Velis, the figure called, voice echoing unnaturally. You bring an oathbreaker to our sacred ground. You will both face judgment. Naira stepped forward. We come for the trial, as law allows. The trial is void, the figure said. The old ways are dust. The bond with humans is forbidden. Your dragon sleeps. Your fire is cold. Lila stepped beside Naira. You're wrong. The figure laughed, a dry, hollow sound. What can a human child know of our laws? I know that you're afraid, Lila said, louder now. Afraid that if we remember the truth, your power ends. But the fire isn't gone. It's here. She placed a hand on her chest. And it's waking up, for the first time. The figure hesitated. Then the ground trembled. From the center of the courtyard, the ancient trial stone rose, carved with symbols of both Silthari and human script long buried. It glowed faintly, responding to Lila's words. The Ashen Veil leader raised a hand. Seize them. But no one moved. From the shadows of the spires, figures emerged, Silthari elders, their eyes wide with recognition. They had seen the stone awaken. They remembered. The trial would happen, not as the Ashen Veil wanted, but as the old fire demanded, and Lila knew, standing beneath the twin moons with Naira at her side, and Kelthar's breath still warm in her memory, that the real test was about to begin. The trial stone stood at the heart of the courtyard, its surface smooth and cool, etched with symbols so old even Naira could not read them all. Around it the Silthari gathered, elders in flowing robes, warriors with eyes like flint, scholars clutching data crystals that hummed with forgotten knowledge. Above them, the twin moons cast overlapping shadows, one silver, one violet, painting the ground in shifting patterns of light and dark. Lila stood barefoot on the stone, as tradition demanded, no weapons, no tech, just her and the truth. Naira had been taken away at dawn, bound in chains of woven moonlight, ceremonial but unbreakable. She would watch from the high gallery, silent and still, her fate tied to Lila's success. If Lila failed, Naira would be stripped of her house, her name, her very memory erased from Silthari records. And Lila, she would be cast into the void, unbound and forgotten. The leader of the Ashen Veil, known only as the Keeper of Silence, stepped forward. His face remained hidden beneath a hood of black silk, but his voice carried like ice across water. "You stand before the Stone of Echoes," he said. "It does not test strength. It does not test skill. It tests memory. If you are worthy, the stone will awaken the resonance. If you are not, it will consume you." Lila swallowed but did not flinch. "I'm ready." The keeper raised a hand. The crowd fell utterly still. Then he spoke the ancient phrase, "Let the past speak through the present." The stone beneath Lila's feet began to glow, not with heat, but with sound, whispers at first, then voices, then songs. Human voices, Silthari voices, laughing, crying, chanting, fighting, loving, the voices of those who had stood here long ago. Lila closed her eyes. She saw flashes, the first human ship landing on Silthara, greeted not with weapons, but with open hands. She saw a child, human in Silthari, playing beneath the twin moons, weaving flower crowns from glowing vines. She saw the war, the great shadow that came from beyond the rim, devouring worlds, silencing stars. And she saw the moment the Silthari began to fade, their light dimming, their songs growing quiet. Then she saw the humans return, not with armies, not with demands, but with a gift. They stood in this very circle, hands joined, hearts open, and they gave their fire not as a weapon but as a spark, a reminder that connection was stronger than fear. The resonance. It wasn't magic. It wasn't power. It was choice. The choice to care for someone not your own, to stand with them even when it cost you everything. Lila opened her eyes. Tears streamed down her face, but she smiled. "I remember," she whispered. The stone flared. Light erupted from its surface, wrapping around Lila like a second skin. It pulsed in time with her heartbeat. The crowd gasped. Even the keeper stepped back. But then the light flickered and dimmed. The keeper laughed softly. "You feel it, don't you, human? The fire is weak in you. Your kind has forgotten how to give. You take, you break. You burn, you do not heal." Lila's breath caught. He was right. Somewhere along the way, humanity had lost the thread. They built empires instead of bridges. They feared the unknown instead of reaching for it. But then she thought of Kelthar taking a plasma bolt for her. She thought of Naira, accepting a bond spoken in jest because she believed in courage. She thought of the old engineer in the memory crystal, sharing his last rations with a Silthari child. "We forgot," Lila said, voice stronger now. "But we didn't lose it. It's still there, in the quiet moments, in the ones who choose kindness when no one is watching." She placed both hands flat on the stone. "I may not be strong, I may not be wise, but I choose to remember." She closed her eyes again and did the one thing no Silthari would expect. She sang, not in Silthari, not in any ancient tongue. She sang a lullaby her grandmother used to hum, a simple, wordless tune from earth passed down through generations, soft, steady, full of love. At first, nothing happened. Then the stone trembled. The lullaby wove into the whispers. Human and Silthari voices joined her, harmonizing across time. The light returned not as a blaze but as a gentle glow, warm and steady. The keeper staggered. "No," This cannot be. But it was. The resonance was not about perfection. It was about sincerity, about showing up even when you were afraid, even when you didn't know the words. Lila kept singing. Above her, Naira watched, tears tracing paths down her cheeks. She felt the bond between them strengthen, not with force but with trust. In the cargo hold of the freighter, deep in hibernation, Kael'thar stirred. A single breath escaped his lips, and in that breath, a spark of gold. The trial stone rose fully now, lifting Lila a few inches off the ground. Symbols flared to life across its surface, human script and Silthari runes side by side, glowing in harmony. The elders fell to their knees. The warriors lowered their heads. Even the keeper of silence removed his hood, revealing a face lined with age and regret. You truly carry it," Lila stopped singing. The light softened but did not fade. "We all do," she said. "You just have to listen." The keeper bowed deeply. "The trial is complete. The bond is true." Chains of moonlight dissolved from Naira's wrists. She ran down the steps and into the courtyard. Stopping just before the stone, she looked at Lila and for the first time, she smiled fully. Warm, open, real. Lila stepped down from the stone and took her hand. No words were needed. The crowd parted as they walked together toward the central spire, the seat of the High Conclave. The elders followed, whispering among themselves, already drafting new records, restoring the old truths. But Lila knew the fight wasn't over. As they entered the spire, a new message arrived on the station-wide network, sent not from Silthara, but from Viridia 9. It was a distress call. The Ashen Veil had struck again, not with assassins, but with lies. They had broadcast false data across the human networks, claiming the Silthari had executed Lila for treason. Panic spread. Human colonies near the border were preparing to sever all ties. Some were even arming warships. "They want war," Nira said, reading the message, "to prove we cannot coexist." "Then we give them proof we can," Lila replied. She turned to the elders. "I need a broadcast. One that shows the truth. Not just to Silthari, to all humans." The eldest among them, a woman with eyes like starlight, nodded. "The resonance stone can send a signal across the galaxy, but it requires a voice both peoples will trust." Lila looked at Naira. "We'll do it together." They stood before the great crystal at the top of the spire. Lila spoke first in simple, clear English. "My name is Lila Cruz. I am human, and I stand here not as a prisoner, not as a traitor, but as a friend." Then Naira spoke, in Silthari, then in halting but heartfelt English. "I am Naira Velis. I am Silthari, and I stand with her not by law but by choice." They told the story, the bond, the attack, the trial, the truth of the old alliance. They showed the memory crystal's visions. They played Lila's lullaby over the comms, and then hand in hand they activated the resonance pulse. A wave of energy spread from Silthara, not destructive, but revealing. It touched every human and Silthari within range, awakening dormant memories, stirring the old fire in those who still carried it. On Viridia 9, a technician paused mid-rant, tears in his eyes, remembering a Silthari medic who saved his daughter years ago. On a mining outpost, a soldier lowered her rifle, haunted by a dream of twin moons and shared songs. Even in the core worlds, where politicians scoffed at alien fairy tales, children began drawing pictures of dragons and silver-eyed women, saying, "They feel like home." The broadcast ended. Silence. Then, responses, thousands of them, from humans, from Silthari, from others who had heard the echo and felt something stir. The galaxy was listening. Back in the spire, Lila leaned against Naira, exhausted but alive. "What now?" Naira asked. "Now," Lila said, "we build. Not just a bond between us, but a bridge for everyone." Kael'thar, still far away in body but close in spirit, exhaled in his sleep, and in that breath the first true note of a new song began. The old fire was awake and it would not be silenced again. The days after the broadcast moved like a slow tide, steady, deep, and full of change. Messages poured in from every corner of known space. Human colonies that had once feared the Silthari now asked for teachers, for healers, for stories. Silthari outposts that had hidden for centuries sent quiet signals of welcome. Even neutral systems, long wary of both sides, began to speak of a new kind of alliance, one not built on treaties or trade, but on memory. On Silthara, The high conclave met in the chamber of twin echoes, a dome open to the sky where the two moons cast their light in perfect balance. They did not debate. They listened. And then for the first time in over 300 years, they voted not as houses divided, but as one people. The Ashen Veil was disbanded. Its leaders were not punished, but given a choice. Serve in silence among the archives or walk the outer wastes until they remembered what it meant to belong. Most chose the archives. Naira was named Voice of the Bond, a new role, created just for her. She would speak for those who walked between worlds, human and Silthari alike. Lila, to her surprise, was offered a seat on the Conclave's advisory circle. She declined the title, but accepted the duty. "I'm not a leader," she told Naira one evening as they stood on the balcony of their new quarters in the central spire. "I'm just someone who showed up." "That is all any of us ever are," Naira replied, leaning against the railing. "Showing up is the hardest part." Below them, the city of Silthera hummed with life. Silver trees swayed in the wind, their leaves chiming like glass bells. Silthari children played with human-made toys sent from Viridia 9. Simple things like spinning tops and woven bracelets. In the distance, Kelthar rested in a sunlit grove, his scales slowly regaining their luster. He had not spoken since the trial, but his presence was stronger than ever, a quiet anchor in the shifting world. Lila watched him for a long time. "Do you think he'll ever fly again?" "Not as he once did," Naira said softly. "But he does not need to. His purpose has changed. He is no longer just my guardian. He is the keeper of the bridge." They were interrupted by a soft chime. A messenger approached, barefoot, robed in white, eyes bright with urgency. "The envoy from Earth has arrived," the messenger said. "They request an audience at moonrise." Leela exchanged a glance with Naira. Earth had not sent an official envoy in over a century, not since the Great Silence when humanity turned inward after the border wars. "They must have seen the broadcast," Lila said. "Or they are testing us," Naira replied. They prepared quickly. No grand ceremony, no displays of power, just 2 chairs in the Garden of Echoes, a table with water and fruit and the open sky above. At moonrise, the envoy arrived. She was older, with silver-streaked hair and hands marked by years of work. Her uniform was simple, no medals, no rank. Just the blue and white of the United Earth Council. "My name is Claire," she said, bowing slightly. "I come not as a representative of governments, but as a daughter of those who once stood with you." Lila recognized her then, not by face, but by voice. Claire was the granddaughter of the engineer from the memory crystal, the one who had shared his rations, who had taught Silthari how to weld with human tools. "You remember?" Lila said. "Not all," Claire admitted, "but enough. My family kept the stories alive, in secret. We were called fools, dreamers. But we never stopped believing." She placed a small box on the table. Inside was a data chip, human-made but encoded with Silthari resonance markers. "This is everything we have," Claire said. "Logs, songs, letters, star maps drawn by hand. The truth your people buried and ours forgot. We give it back to you. Not as a gift. As a return." Naira took the chip with both hands as one would hold a newborn. "Thank you." They spoke late into the night, of lost years, of fear, of hope. Claire told them of Earth's struggles, climate collapse, resource wars, the slow crawl back from the edge. But also of renewal. Cities built on green principles, children taught empathy as a core subject, artists weaving alien motifs into human music. "We are not the same people who left you," Claire said, "but maybe we can become the ones you once knew." When she left at dawn, she carried a new message, one co-written by Lila and Naira. It spoke not of dominance or defense, but of shared learning, open borders, and a school to be built on the edge of Silthera's rings, where human and Silthari children could learn each other's languages, songs, and dreams. Weeks passed. The school was approved. Construction began. Volunteers came from both sides, engineers, teachers, gardeners, cooks. Even a few former Ashen Veil members joined, not to atone but to learn. Lila spent her days teaching basic Silthari to human children, using games and songs. Naira worked with Silthari elders to recover more memory crystals, piecing together the full history of the Alliance. And Kelthar? He sat in the center of the future school's courtyard, letting children climb on his tail, his wings, his snout. He never spoke, but his eyes followed Lila with quiet pride. One evening, as the twin moons rose, Lila found Naira on the same balcony where they'd stood weeks before. "Do you ever miss it?" Lila asked. "Earth, I mean." Naira was silent for a long time. "I never knew Earth. But I miss the idea of it, the place where you came from, where your fire was born. But I do not wish to leave here. This is where we are needed," Lila nodded. "Me neither. I used to think home was a place. Now I think it's a choice. And I choose this." Naira reached for her hand, their fingers intertwined, the bond between them warm and steady. No longer a shock, but a rhythm. Below, Kelthar lifted his head. He looked up at them, then let out a soft, rumbling purr that echoed through the stone and sky. It was not a roar. It was a lullaby. And in that moment, the galaxy felt less lonely. News spread, not through warships or warnings, but through stories. A human child on Mars drew a picture of a silver woman and a dragon, and her teacher wept. A Silthari poet on the Outer Rim wrote verses in English, clumsy but full of heart. Traders began exchanging not just goods, but recipes, jokes, lullabies. The old fire was not a weapon. It was a hearth. And around it, a new kind of humanity. Humans and Silthari alike began to gather. Lila and Nira did not know what came next. There would be challenges. Old fears would rise again. New enemies might form. But they had proven one thing, that a single joke, spoken with an open heart, could change everything. And as they stood together beneath the twin moons, hands clasped dragon at their feet, they knew they were not just two women bound by accident. They were the first note of a song the galaxy had almost forgotten, and this time, they would make sure it was heard.